Famous Guitars, episode number 34. Well, you take a classic Flying V guitar, you add a Bigsby tremolo to it, or vibrato system, however you want to word it, and you might think I'm talking about this famous guitar right here.
And of course, I'm talking about Lonnie Mack and his famous number 7 Flying V guitar. The number 7 is one of the most iconic Flying Vs probably ever created. Essentially, when Gibson released the Flying V back in 1958, it's probably understating things to say that it wasn't really very popular or very well received. Only 98 guitars were ever sold, and production officially stopped in 1959, though a handful of leftover guitars continued to sell right around about 1963. Today, however, the Flying V is an iconic part of the Gibson lineup, and Gibson has gone through a lot of lawsuits, a lot of cease and desists, and great pains to try to protect that shape. And arguably, one of the key figures in helping to take that Flying V from commercial disaster to one of the most iconic guitar designs ever is the one and only man himself, Lonnie Mack. Lonnie McIntosh was a young musician who'd been kicked out of school, and instead of spending his days in school, obviously because he was kicked out, he spent it at a local music store called Hughes Music in the town of Norwood, Ohio, which incidentally is about 4 hours southwest of where I'm recording this video right now. It was at that music store that Lonnie first laid eyes on the futuristic new design in the pages of Gibson's 1959 catalog, and unlike most guitarists at the time, he was very taken with it. Stories say that he liked the shape because, being a Native American himself, he liked the guitar's resemblance to an arrowhead. So the shop put in an order for him, and he even ended up making a 600-mile round trip from Norwood to the Gibson factory in Kalamazoo, Michigan to pick up the guitar. The serial number would indicate that Lonnie's V was the 7th one to come off that assembly line. So when he got the instrument, he loved it so much and played it as the stock instrument that it was for quite some time. In fact, you can see Lonnie posing with it on the front of his 1963 debut album, The Wham of the Memphis Man. But there's something about the stock design of the guitar that really bothered him. He wanted a vibrato, and the guitar shape didn't really lend itself to any type of vibrato units on the market at that time. In fact, at that time, the most popular vibrato that was going on, probably the only one that you could use, was a Bigsby. And of course, if you know anything about guitars and the Bigsby design, a Flying V was really just not the right guitar shape to house a Bigsby tremolo system or vibrato system. So the music store owner by the name of Glenn Hughes instead determined that he would take a piece of stainless steel, cut and bend it to fit across the span of the V, and mount it where Bigsby's rear screws would need to be. And there you have it. The first ever Bigsby-loaded Gibson Flying V was born that day. Mack used the Flying V from the very earliest days of his musical career, and by the end of The Wham of the Music Man, he was receiving critical acclaim for his fast-paced instrumental guitar solos, especially on the song Wham. In fact, and this is fascinating, it's widely believed that the term for the vibrato whammy bar was inspired by Mack's use of the vibrato arm on that song Wham. Mack put out several solo albums in the coming years, though his popularity was curbed by the British invasion, but his influential impact would continue as a session player, providing bass on the Doors' Alabama song and guitar for the likes of James Brown and Freddie King. And for the rest of the entirety of his career, his number 7 Flying V, as it came to be known, was his consistent companion. Also, beyond the Bigsby, it also went through some changes in the decades when he used it. In the late 60s, it got some new pickups, and at one point he also painted it red, but ended up with somewhat of a pink hue to it as the paint dried. Number 7 lived a hard life on the road and in the studio as a workhorse. It actually fell out of the back of a van while Lonnie was driving from a gig, and also it was reported that he had thrown it in the trash can after a particularly rough gig. Fortunately, a fan retrieved it and gave it back to him. This was especially fortunate from a financial perspective because even if Mack didn't own the instrument, it would have easily been worth 6 figures today. The guitar was played so much that it underwent at least one refret during its lifespan. In 1993, Gibson released a limited run of signature Flying Vs complete with a Bigsby tailpiece. In this article from Guitar.com, the writer believes about 185 of them were made. As for Lonnie Mack, he passed away on April 21st, 2016 at the age of 74. His passing was somewhat overshadowed by the passing of Prince, who died that same year. The current whereabouts of the number 7 Flying V is unknown, but is presumed to belong to Mack's family. He also had a small batch of custom shop replicas that he would occasionally use. So there you go, there's your Famous Guitars episode number 34, Lonnie Mack's number 7 Flying V guitar.
And please be sure to like, share, and follow for more famous guitars. And Merry Christmas, everybody.